First Contact and Prejudice. Captain Taz stood at the command bridge of the FSS Vigilant, his scaled fingers drumming against the polished surface of his command console. The latest reports from the Western Frontier colony scrolled across his holographic display, each one adding to his growing frustration. 3 settlements raided in the past standard month alone, hundreds of colonists taken as slaves, and millions in resources stolen. The Grand Terran pirates were growing bolder with each successful raid. Another report from Outpost Sigma 7, Sir, his communications officer, a tall Meridian with silvery skin, announced. They're requesting additional defensive platforms. Taz suppressed a growl. Add it to the queue. The Senate won't approve it anyway. He had spent the last 5 cycles trying to convince the Federation leadership that the pirate threat required immediate attention. But the core worlds were too far removed from the frontier's problems to care. The door to the bridge slid open with a soft hiss, and Commander VYX, his second-in-command, entered with a troubled expression on her face. Captain, we've received new orders from High Command. Let me guess, another patrol route that will keep us far from where we're actually needed? No, sir. They're assigning us new personnel. We're to integrate a company of Terran Marines into our rapid response force. Taz's head snapped up, his violet eyes narrowing. Terrans? Those primitives who barely figured out FTL travel? He pulled up the species file on his display. Earth had only joined the Federation as an associate member 3 cycles ago. Their technology was centuries behind the Federation standard, and their military still relied on chemical propulsion weapons. Yes, sir. It's part of the new integration initiative. The Senate believes it will help accelerate their development and strengthen diplomatic ties. Politics, Taz spat the word like a curse. We're fighting a war against ruthless pirates, and they want us to babysit a species that still thinks gunpowder is cutting-edge technology. The commander shifted uncomfortably. There's more, sir. The Terran company arrives tomorrow, and they're bringing their own combat doctrine and equipment. Taz studied the human military files more closely. Their weapons were archaic by Federation standards, rifles that used chemical explosions to propel metal projectiles, explosive devices that relied on primitive fission technology, and armor that wouldn't stop a standard plasma bolt. But something in their combat history caught his attention. These humans had a remarkable talent for warfare despite their technological limitations. Fine, he finally said. We'll integrate them into non-combat roles. Observation, logistics, support, anything that keeps them out of the way when real fighting starts. He turned to face the vast observation window, watching the stars streak by. The Grand Terran won't wait while we teach basic space combat to a bunch of primitive warriors. Little did Taz know that his prejudices about Earth's military capabilities were about to be severely challenged. The next day, Taz stood in the main hangar bay as the Terran transport ship docked. It was an ungainly vessel by Federation standards, all angular lines and visible weld seams. The ship's hull bore the markings of the United Earth Defense Force alongside the Federation insignia, a visual reminder of humanity's junior status in the galactic community. The docking ramp extended with a hydraulic whine that made Taz wince. Federation technology was virtually silent. This mechanical cacophony was yet another sign of Earth's technological backwardness. But when the first Terran Marines emerged, even Taz had to admit there was something impressive about their bearing. Lieutenant Sarah Jackson led her company with precise, measured steps. The humans wore powered armor that looked crude but functional, painted in urban camouflage patterns that seemed oddly practical compared to the gleaming ceremonial colors of Federation forces. They carried their primitive rifles with an ease that spoke of countless hours of training. Lieutenant Jackson reporting as ordered, sir, she saluted crisply. First Company, 7th Marine Expeditionary Unit, ready for deployment. Taz returned the salute with careful neutrality. Welcome aboard the Vigilant, Lieutenant. I trust you've been briefed on your role here. Yes, sir. We're to provide support and observe Federation combat operations against pirate forces in the western frontier. There was something in her tone, not quite insubordination, but a hint of steel that suggested she had her own thoughts about being relegated to a support role. Correct. Your company will be quartered in Section D, Deck 7. Commander VYX will show you to your facilities and brief you on our protocols. Taz turned to leave, then paused. Lieutenant, I should make something clear. The Grand Terran pirates are not like any enemy you've faced before. They have shield technology that makes your projectile weapons obsolete, and their plasma weapons can vaporize your troops before they get within firing range. For your own safety, and the safety of this mission, you will follow orders and stay in your designated support role. Is that understood? Jackson's expression remained professional, but her eyes flickered with something, amusement. Perfectly understood, sir. Though you might find that Earth's military has a few surprises of its own. As Taz watched the humans march off to their quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The way they moved, the way they handled their weapons, the quiet confidence in their bearing, it all spoke of a martial tradition that demanded respect, regardless of their technological level. The next few days were spent integrating the Terran company into the vigilance operations. Despite his reservations, Taz had to admit they were quick learners. They adapted to Federation protocols with remarkable speed, and their physical conditioning was impressive. Even their primitive weapons were maintained with a level of precision that bordered on the obsessive. But the real test would come soon enough. Intelligence suggested the Grand Terran were planning another raid, this time targeting the colony world of Sealand 7. The pirates had grown confident in their ability to strike and withdraw before Federation forces could respond, but Taz's rapid response force was about to change that equation. As he reviewed the battle plans in his ready room, Taz found himself wondering how the Terrans would react in a real combat situation. Would they maintain their professional demeanor when faced with energy weapons and shield technology beyond their understanding? Or would they break and run, proving his initial assessment correct? He was about to find out. The proximity alarm blared through the ship, and his tactical officer's voice came over the comm, "Captain to the bridge. We've detected Grand Terran signatures entering the Sealand system." The real test was about to begin, and despite himself, Taz was curious to see how Earth's warriors would measure up against the galaxy's harsh realities. The first engagement. The Grand Terran attack force materialized from hyperspace like predators emerging from the depths, sleek, dangerous, and radiating malevolent purpose. Taz counted 6 raider vessels, more than usual for their hit-and-run tactics. Either they were getting bolder, or their intelligence about Sealand 7's defenses was outdated. "Battle stations," Taz ordered, his voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through his system. "Launch alert fighters and begin deployment of ground forces. The pirates have already landed raiding parties, we need to hit them before they can establish defensive positions." Lieutenant Jackson and her Terran Marines assembled in the drop bay, checking their seemingly primitive equipment with practiced efficiency. Taz had assigned them to the reserve force, intended to provide support only if absolutely necessary. He still couldn't fathom how they expected to fight with their archaic weapons. "Sir," Commander VYX reported, "the pirates have deployed some kind of jamming field. Our targeting systems are degraded by 30%. Taz's scales bristled with irritation. The Grand Terran were adapting, learning from their previous encounters with Federation forces. "Launch the drop ships. We'll have to do this the hard way." The descent to Sealand 7's surface was a carefully choreographed dance of evasion and counterfire. Federation drop ships weaved through streams of plasma fire, their energy shields flickering under the assault. Taz led from the front, his command vessel taking point as they approached the main settlement. "Ground forces, deploy and engage," he ordered as the ships touched down. "Priority is protecting the civilian shelters. The pirates cannot be allowed to take hostages." The battle unfolded across the settlement's outskirts. Federation troops, armed with the latest in plasma rifle technology, engaged the Grand Karen raiders in a series of fierce firefights. The pirates' personal shield technology gave them an edge in close combat, forcing the Federation forces to rely on tactical superiority and coordinated fire. From his command position, Taz watched the battle unfold with growing concern. The pirates had indeed grown stronger, more organized. They were using advanced tactics, forcing his troops into disadvantageous positions and slowly gaining ground. "Sir," an officer reported, "we're detecting more pirate forces emerging from their ships. They must have held back their main force until we committed our troops." Taz cursed in his native tongue. The pirates had outmaneuvered them, using their initial forces as bait to draw out the Federation response. Now his troops were spread thin, and the enemy was bringing in reinforcements. "Captain," Commander VYX's voice was tense, "the pirates are pushing toward the civilian shelters in Sector 7. Our forces there are getting overwhelmed." Taz studied the tactical display, his mind racing through options. The Federation troops were fighting well, but they were outnumbered and in danger of being surrounded. He had one reserve force left, the Terran Marines. "Lieutenant Jackson," he called over the comm, "deploy your forces to Sector 7. Defensive positions only. Buy our troops time to regroup." "Understood, sir," Jackson replied, and Taz could have sworn he heard anticipation in her voice. "Marines, move out." What happened next would forever change Taz's understanding of warfare. The Terran Marines moved with a speed and precision that belied their primitive appearance. They took up positions along the approaches to Sector 7, setting up what looked like heavy weapon emplacements. Taz watched through tactical feeds as the pirates advanced, their shields gleaming with confidence. The first volley from the Terran weapons changed everything. Their rifles, which Taz had dismissed as primitive, spat streams of metal projectiles at rates he had never seen before. The primitive bullets, it turned out, had been specially designed to defeat energy shields through sheer kinetic force. Where Federation plasma rifles needed multiple hits to overwhelm a shield, the human weapons simply hammered through them with brutal efficiency. "Sir," VYX reported, her voice filled with disbelief, "the Terran weapons, they're penetrating the pirates' shields." Taz watched as the human Marines demonstrated why their species had survived countless wars on their homeworld. Their tactics were a perfect blend of fire and movement, their weapons complementing each other in ways he had never considered. What he had dismissed as an antique machine gun was laying down suppressing fire that kept the pirates pinned down, while their sniper rifles picked off enemy leaders with terrifying accuracy. But it was their heavy weapons that truly shocked him. The primitive explosives they deployed weren't simple chemical bombs, they were advanced kinetic penetrators that ignored energy shields entirely. A pair of Marines set up what Jackson called a Carl Gustav recoilless rifle, and its first shot went straight through a pirate's supposedly impenetrable shield and turned him into vapor. "All Federation forces," Taz broadcasted, his previous prejudices forgotten in the heat of battle, "coordinate with the Terran units. They've found a weakness in the enemy's defenses, exploit it." The tide of battle turned. The pirates, accustomed to the predictable patterns of Federation energy weapons, found themselves facing an enemy that fought with devastating unpredictability. The humans' projectile weapons bypassed their greatest defensive advantage, and their tactical flexibility allowed them to adapt faster than the raiders could respond. Lieutenant Jackson's voice came over the comm, cool and professional despite the chaos around her. "Captain, we've got them contained in Sector 7. Request permission to press the advantage." Taz watched as another group of pirates fell to the humans' surprisingly effective weapons. Their primitive technology had proven to be anything but primitive, it was simply different, developed along lines that Federation military doctrine had never considered. "Permission granted, Lieutenant. Show us what else those Earth weapons can do." As he gave the order, Taz realized he would need to seriously re-evaluate his assumptions about human military capabilities. The Terran Marines weren't just holding their own, they were teaching the Federation forces lessons about warfare that would change military doctrine forever. The battle for Sealand 7 was far from over, but it was already clear that the addition of Earth's primitive warriors to his command had been no political burden, it had been an incredible stroke of luck. The pirates were about to learn why underestimating humanity's martial prowess was a serious mistake. Adaptation and innovation. The aftermath of the battle for Sealand 7 sent shockwaves through both the Federation military command and the pirate networks. Captain Taz stood in the Vigilance tactical room, reviewing holographic recordings of the engagement with a group of senior officers. Among them was Lieutenant Jackson, now viewed with newfound respect by her Federation colleagues. "Play it again," ordered Admiral Kex, who had arrived shortly after news of the victory spread. The hologram showed a Terran Marine squad engaging a group of pirates. The humans' weapons cut through energy shields like they weren't even there, their coordinated tactics displaying a level of battlefield awareness that impressed even the veteran Federation commanders. "Lieutenant," the Admiral addressed Jackson, "your troops' performance was unprecedented. But what interests me most is how you anticipated the shield's vulnerability to kinetic weapons." Jackson straightened in her chair. "Sir, Earth's military history is filled with examples of asymmetric warfare. When facing technologically superior opponents, you learn to find unconventional solutions. We studied the shield specifications provided during our integration and realized they were optimized against energy weapons, not physical projectiles." "And these, what did you call them?" "Heap rounds?" Taz inquired, genuinely curious now. "High-explosive anti-platform ammunition," Jackson explained. "We modified our standard ammunition to exploit the shield's refresh rate. The initial kinetic impact creates a microsecond gap in the shield, allowing the secondary explosive charge to penetrate." The revelation sparked intense discussion among the Federation officers. Their entire defensive doctrine was based on energy shield technology. If human weapons could bypass these defenses so easily, what other vulnerabilities existed in their supposedly superior technology? But the pirates weren't sitting idle. Intelligence reports indicated that the Grand Karen were already adapting their tactics. Their defeat at Sealand 7 had cost them more than ships and warriors, it had shattered their aura of invincibility. 3 weeks after the battle, the Vigilant received an urgent distress call from the mining colony on Proxima 6. The message was garbled, but one thing was clear: the pirates had developed countermeasures against the Terran weapons. "They're learning," Taz observed grimly, studying the tactical display. "The raiders are using some kind of modified shield technology. Early reports suggest they've found a way to extend their shield harmonics to deflect kinetic impacts." Jackson nodded, but there was a glint in her eye that Taz had come to recognize, the look of a human about to demonstrate why their species had survived countless wars. "With respect, Captain, we anticipated this. Earth's weapons developers have been working on something new." She pulled up schematics on the display, showing what looked like modifications to their existing weapons. "We call it the multi-stage penetrator system. If they've adapted their shields to deal with our current ammunition, we'll just have to hit them harder, and smarter." The opportunity to test these new weapons came sooner than expected. The Grand Karen, emboldened by their technological countermeasures, launched a major raid against Proxima VI's largest settlement. But this time, they found themselves facing a fundamentally changed Federation response force. Taz had spent the intervening weeks integrating Terran combat doctrine with Federation tactics. Human Marines now fought alongside Federation troops in mixed units, combining the best aspects of both military traditions. Energy weapons provided suppressing fire while kinetic weapons exploited gaps in enemy defenses. Federation mobility systems enhanced human combat techniques. The battle for Proxima 6 became a testing ground for this new hybrid warfare. The pirates deployed their modified shields, expecting to negate the human advantage. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had already evolved beyond their countermeasures. The multi-stage penetrators lived up to their name. When the first stage impacted a shield, it created a cascading feedback loop in the shield's energy matrix. The second stage exploited this disruption, while the third stage delivered the killing blow. It was elegant, efficient, and absolutely devastating. But the humans' contribution went beyond just weapons technology. Their tactical flexibility and ability to improvise in the heat of battle proved just as valuable. When a group of pirates took hostages in one of the mining complexes, it was a joint Human Federation team that resolved the situation. Remember, Jackson briefed her mixed unit of Marines and Federation troops, "We're not just fighting with different weapons, we're fighting with different mindsets. They expect us to follow conventional military doctrine. Let's show them why that's a mistake." The rescue operation that followed would be studied in military academies for years to come. Federation stealth technology got the team inside, human combat techniques cleared the complex room by room, and their combined weapons technology ensured no hostage was harmed despite the pirates' desperate resistance. As Taz watched the operation unfold from his command center, he reflected on how quickly things had changed. Just months ago, he had dismissed the humans as primitives. Now, he found himself learning from them, adapting his own tactical thinking to incorporate their unconventional approaches. The pirates' reaction to their second major defeat was telling. Intercepted communications revealed growing discord among their leadership. Some advocated for avoiding Federation forces entirely, while others pushed for more extreme measures. The Grand Terran were facing an existential crisis: adapt or fade into irrelevance. But it was during the debriefing after Proxima 6 that the true significance of these changes became clear. Admiral Kex addressed the assembled commanders with unusual frankness. "What we're seeing here is more than just tactical innovation," he declared. "The integration of human military thinking with Federation technology represents a fundamental shift in how we approach warfare. The pirates aren't just facing new weapons, they're facing a new paradigm." Lieutenant Jackson, standing among her Federation colleagues, added her own perspective. "On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Our history forced us to become adaptable, to find ways to overcome superior technology with innovation and unconventional thinking. Now, combined with Federation resources, we're creating something entirely new." The implications went beyond just military matters. The success of the Human Federation cooperation was forcing the Senate to reevaluate its attitudes toward primitive species. If humanity could contribute so significantly despite their technological limitations, what other insights might they offer? But even as the Federation celebrated these successes, new challenges were emerging. The Grand Terran were not defeated yet, and their next move would test this new alliance in ways no one could have anticipated. Desperate measures. The Grand Terran's response to their consecutive defeats came in a form no one expected. Captain Taz stared at the holographic display in disbelief as reports flooded in from across the western frontier. The pirates weren't just adapting their tactics, they were completely changing their strategy. "They're hitting multiple targets simultaneously," Commander VYX reported, her voice tense. "Small raids, widely dispersed. Our response force can't be everywhere at once." "Clever bastards," Lieutenant Jackson muttered, studying the attack pattern. "They're forcing us to split up. If we concentrate our forces to defend one location effectively, we leave others vulnerable." The tactical display showed red dots appearing across the frontier sectors, each representing a pirate raid. The attacks were smaller than before, but their frequency and distribution created a strategic nightmare. The Federation human joint forces that had proven so effective in large engagements were being stretched thin. Admiral Kex, who had made the Vigilant his temporary flagship, frowned at the display. "They're learning from their defeats. Instead of challenging our combined strength directly, they're exploiting our limited numbers. But the pirates' new strategy wasn't their only adaptation. Reports from the scattered engagements revealed they had developed new technologies of their own, hybrid shields that combine traditional energy barriers with graviton fields, making them resistant to both energy weapons and kinetic penetrators. "They've been studying us," Jackson observed during a tactical briefing. "Every time we develop a new countermeasure, they adapt. It's becoming an arms race." Taz nodded grimly. "And they have one advantage we don't: they're willing to sacrifice their own people to test new technologies in combat. Each raid gives them more data, more opportunities to refine their defenses." The situation reached a crisis point when intelligence reported a massive buildup of pirate forces in the Deneb sector. Unlike their recent dispersal tactics, this appeared to be a concentration of their strongest assets. Something big was coming. "It's a trap," Taz declared during the emergency council. "They're trying to draw us in with an obvious threat while their smaller units continue raiding elsewhere." "Agreed," Admiral Keck said. "But can we afford to ignore it? If they're gathering their forces, it could mean they're planning something beyond their usual raids." Lieutenant Jackson had been quietly studying the intelligence reports. "Sir, I think I know what they're planning." She highlighted several data points in the holographic display. "These energy signatures, the way they're positioning their forces, it reminds me of something from Earth's history, the Mongol invasion of Japan." The Federation officers looked confused, but Jackson continued. "The Mongols were master raiders who eventually attempted full-scale invasion. These pirate formations suggest something similar: they're preparing for a massive assault on a major colony world." The implications were staggering. The Grand Karen had never attempted anything on that scale before. But the evidence was compelling: they were adapting Earth's historical military strategies just as the Federation had adapted human weapons technology. If they're successful, Taz realized, it would prove that our recent victories were flukes. They could rally other pirate groups to their cause, maybe even challenge Federation authority directly. The next few days were a blur of preparation and planning. The combined Federation human force had to respond to the threat, but they couldn't leave the frontier completely undefended. The solution came from an unexpected source: Earth's military history. "We call it the fleet-in-being strategy," Jackson explained, outlining a plan that seemed counterintuitive to the Federation officers. "Instead of trying to defend everything, we make the enemy believe we could strike anywhere. We keep our main force mobile and unpredictable while using smaller units to harass and delay their operations." The strategy required a complete reorganization of their forces. Federation ships were paired with human tactical advisors, creating autonomous hunter-killer groups that could operate independently. The Vigilant would lead the main battle group, ready to respond to major threats while the smaller units kept the pirates off balance. But the Grand Karen had one more surprise in store. As the Federation forces implemented their new strategy, the pirates unveiled their ultimate weapon, a massive battleship unlike anything seen before in the frontier sectors. It combined stolen Federation technology with brutal innovations of their own, creating a vessel that seemed designed specifically to counter both Federation and human tactics. "That ship," Taz breathed, watching the first footage of the vessel in action. "It's not just a pirate vessel. It's a statement. They're telling us they can match our technology, our tactics, everything we throw at them." The battleship, which the pirates called the World Breaker, proved its worth in its first engagement. A Federation patrol fleet was virtually annihilated, its weapons barely scratching the vessel's advanced defenses. The few survivors reported that the ship carried weapons they'd never seen before, hybrid systems that combined the worst aspects of both Federation and human military technology. "They've been planning this for months," Admiral Keck concluded. "Every raid, every engagement, they were gathering data, testing our responses, learning our weaknesses. This ship is the culmination of everything they've learned about us." The situation had evolved far beyond simple piracy. The Grand Terran were making a bid for real power in the frontier sectors, and their new flagship represented a threat that neither Federation technology nor human innovation seemed prepared to counter. As the combined Federation human force prepared for what promised to be their greatest challenge yet, Taz found himself in a quiet conversation with Lieutenant Jackson. "I once thought your weapons were primitive," he admitted. "Now I realize that true primitiveness isn't about technology, it's about refusing to adapt, to learn, to evolve." Jackson nodded. "The pirates have learned that lesson too. The question is, can we stay one step ahead of them?" The answer to that question would determine not just the fate of the frontier sectors, but potentially the future of Federation-human relations and the balance of power in known space. Revolution in military affairs. The Worldbreaker hung in space like a malevolent star, its hybrid weapon systems glowing with barely contained energy. Captain Taz studied the tactical readouts with growing concern. The pirate flagship had already destroyed 3 Federation outposts, and conventional attacks seemed futile against its advanced defenses. "Their shield technology is unlike anything we've encountered," Commander VYX reported. "It's as if they've taken every lesson learned from our previous encounters and created something entirely new." Lieutenant Jackson stood before the tactical display, her expression thoughtful. The latest intelligence suggested the Worldbreaker was heading toward New Alexandria, one of the largest and most prosperous colonies in the frontier sectors. If it fell, the psychological impact would be devastating. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Jackson suddenly declared. "We've been trying to counter their technology with better technology, but that's playing into their hands. We need to think bigger." Admiral Kex raised an eyebrow. "Explain, Lieutenant." "On Earth, we have a concept called a revolution in military affairs, when technological, strategic, and organizational innovations combine to fundamentally change the nature of warfare." Jackson manipulated the tactical display, highlighting various aspects of the Worldbreaker. "The pirates have created their own RMA by combining Federation and human military principles. To beat them, we need to create something even more revolutionary." What followed was one of the most intense planning sessions in Federation military history. Human strategic concepts merged with Federation technological expertise in ways neither side had considered before. The result was Operation Thunderbolt, a plan so audacious that even the pirates couldn't have anticipated it. "It's insane," Taz said after reviewing the final proposal. "Which is exactly why it might work. The operation would require perfect coordination between Federation and human forces, pushing both groups' capabilities to their absolute limits. But more than that, it would require complete trust between species that had, until recently, viewed each other with suspicion and disdain." The first phase began with a series of seemingly uncoordinated attacks on pirate supply lines. Small, mixed human Federation strike teams hit logistics bases and communication relays, using tactics that seemed random and desperate. The Worldbreaker continued its advance toward New Alexandria, apparently dismissing these attacks as mere nuisance raids. But each strike was carefully planned, each target specifically chosen. The humans called it preparing the battlefield, though they were operating on a scale their ancestors could hardly have imagined. "The beauty of it," Jackson explained during the final briefing, "is that they think they know our capabilities. They've studied our tactics, analyzed our weapons, and built countermeasures for everything they've seen. But they've never seen anything like what we're about to do." The Vigilant led a task force of Federation warships in what appeared to be a desperate defensive action near New Alexandria. The Worldbreaker approached confidently, its hybrid weapons already charging. But as the massive vessel moved to engage, the true nature of Operation Thunderbolt was revealed. The seemingly random raids had actually been placing specialized equipment throughout the sector, a combination of Federation quantum entanglement devices and modified versions of human EMP technology. When activated simultaneously, they created a cascade effect that temporarily disrupted the space-time fabric itself. The Worldbreaker's sophisticated shields, designed to counter both energy and kinetic weapons, suddenly found themselves trying to defend against something entirely different: localized fluctuations in fundamental physical laws. Now! Taz ordered, and the combined Federation human fleet struck with perfect coordination. Federation ships launched salvos of plasma torpedoes, not at the Worldbreaker itself, but at carefully calculated points in space around it. Human-designed kinetic weapons followed microseconds later, their trajectories altered by the spacetime distortions in ways that made them virtually impossible to track. The pirates' flagship, for all its technological sophistication, had no defense against this unprecedented form of attack. Its hybrid shields tried to adapt, but each adjustment only made it more vulnerable to the next wave of the assault. But the operation's most revolutionary aspect came from the boarding action that followed. Mixed teams of Federation troops and Terran Marines, using specially modified transport pods, approached the Worldbreaker through the artificial spacetime disruptions. Remember, Jackson transmitted to all teams, everything we've done until now has been leading to this moment. Show them what happens when humanity and the Federation truly fight as one. The boarding action was unlike anything in military history. Federation phase shift technology allowed the teams to bypass internal barriers while human combat doctrine guided their room-by-room clearing of the massive vessel. The pirates found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to ignore physical laws at will, attacking from impossible angles with impossible weapons. From his command position on the Vigilant, Taz watched in awe as the operation unfolded. The principles seemed to violate everything he had learned about space combat, yet the results were undeniable. The Worldbreaker, pride of the Grand Terran fleet, was being systematically dismantled by a force it had dismissed as inferior. The final moment came when the boarding teams reached the ship's bridge. The pirate admiral, faced with the full demonstration of Federation human military cooperation, surrendered rather than face complete destruction. The Worldbreaker, instead of being destroyed, would be studied and its innovations adapted to defend against future threats. In the aftermath of the battle, as Federation and human forces secured the frontier sectors, Taz found himself in a reflective mood. "We've created something unprecedented here," he told Jackson as they watched recovery operations from the Vigilant's observation deck. "Not just new weapons or tactics, but a new way of thinking about warfare itself." Jackson nodded. "That's the real revolution, not the technology or the strategies, but the understanding that true strength comes from combining different perspectives, different approaches. The pirates thought they could beat us by copying our methods, but they never understood the importance of genuine cooperation. The victory had implications far beyond military matters. The Senate, impressed by the success of the Federation human cooperation, fast-tracked Earth's application for full Federation membership. The integration of human military thinking with Federation technology sparked a renaissance in military doctrine that would influence galactic defense for generations to come. But perhaps the most significant change was in attitudes. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitives now sought their counsel on military matters. Federation officers who had relied solely on technological superiority began studying Earth's military history for insights. The term human warfare became not an insult but a mark of respect. As the Vigilant prepared for its next mission, Taz reflected on how far they had come. The frontier sectors were safer than ever, protected by a force that combined the best aspects of two military traditions. The pirates who survived had been forced to adapt to a new reality, one where technological superiority alone was no guarantee of victory. "You know," he told Jackson as they reviewed plans for implementing their successful strategies across the Federation fleet, "I once thought your weapons were primitive. I never understood that the most powerful weapon isn't a gun or a ship or even a tactical doctrine." "Oh?" Jackson raised an eyebrow. "And what is it?" "The ability to change, to adapt, to see beyond our own assumptions." Taz gestured at the stars visible through the observation window. "Out there, somewhere, the next threat is waiting. But thanks to what we've learned here, we'll be ready for it." The human lieutenant smiled. "That's the thing about warfare, it never stops evolving. The moment you think you've mastered it is the moment you begin to lose." As if to emphasize her point, a priority message flashed on their screens. A new situation was developing in the outer sectors, one that would test their combined capabilities in ways they had never imagined. But this time, they would face it not as separate species with different approaches, but as a unified force that had learned to harness the strengths of both worlds. The revolution in military affairs they had started was just beginning, and its effects would reshape the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. The age of Earth's superior firepower had truly begun. The end.